Of Mice and Miko. Tower 17. Chapter 2. My problems were everyone's problems. I was on a bus full of homeless, unemployed people, and we were all being taken from our lives and brought together at the request of a computer program. It was easy to feel hopeless, watching the UFMs break down the buildings outside the window of our rolling metal prison. When they were done, they only left a slab behind. We moved slowly along the freeway. It wasn't like there were traffic jams, or traffic of any kind for that matter. Maybe the Miko just assumed that traffic in Chicago should be slow. It could have been that we were within sight of the towers, and they wanted us to feel it. Old Chicago had been a mix of old and new, of brick and glass. The Miko's Chicago was 3 buildings. 3 massive towers sitting atop a concrete plateau that stretched out over the demolished cityscape. The UFMs worked tirelessly to make that vision a reality. The towers dominated the skyline with a scale I can't adequately describe. Every so often, we could get a good look at them through the decaying city. People would huddle to one side of the bus or the other, pressing their faces into the windows to get a good look. Each red brick tower had a podium the size of an apartment building, while the towers themselves kissed the clouds. It wasn't their height that made it so impressive, though they were quite tall. It was their width. The podium looked like it covered 2 blocks in every direction. They were made of brick and stable. I couldn't imagine humanity building something like that immense, even if they wanted to. It would have taken decades just to get the land, then another for the permits. Finding the skilled labor to do it would have been impossible. But for the Miko, Bilkos were cheap. Large red brick spires tore into the clouds around the cathedral-like domes made of hexagonal plates of glass that reflected the light in every direction like a beacon. Beneath the domes sat a statue looking out over the city, standing in silent vigil. More statues sat on top of the plinth, above the doors, standing guard. I didn't know what the statues were until later, but they were symbol of the Miko's hokum, the tabernacle. The statue on the base was called the Gatekeeper. People in the tower called it an icon of the One, whatever that meant. It was made of polished copper that glowed in the sunlight. 2 pillars of stone met its extended arms, forming the foundation of something or other. Its wings were silver and tightly bound on its back. The icon in the sky was more important, the Illuminator. Its arms were folded, and its head was bowed in prayer. The body was cut from granite as black as onyx, which seemed to eat all the sunlight that hit it, trapping it. Its silver wings were open, and its crown was gold, and both sparkled in the sunlight like aircraft warning lights. Gray brick shafts ran along the sides and the middle of the tower, covered with windows like black uncaring voids. To be honest, they must have been a marvel to see lit up at night, lit up like a Christmas tree. I retreated into my own mind rather than face the boredom of the bus or the terror of the towers. It had only been 7 hours since I was sitting in my home, facing my obsolescence. My company had been bought out 3 times in the last 6 months, and each investment company brought their own profit-maximizing schemes. The last shell company decided my job was less about my ability to turn blocks of metal into usable objects, and more about documenting that I did it. Metrics, analytics, barcodes, all feeding the AI and the bureaucratic machine. They said it was about maximizing my productivity, but all it did was slow me down. They called me into the administrative offices and sat me in a chair flanked by 2 Bilkos. Some human resources manager told me my utilization was down, like I was a piece of equipment. They called me obsolete. At 55, I wasn't young anymore, but I felt like I still had more to give. In the face of my replacement, a box of sand with a laser that could draw whatever they wanted into existence, I felt like they were right. It affected me, being obsolete. It put me in a daze, made me complacent. What else could I do? The few jobs that were left in town were fought over fiercely by younger men with a lot more to lose. And they were all the same, a highly competitive rat race to prove who could do the most paperwork. I was despondent, looking down into the bottom of my coffee cup, while commercials played endlessly on my TV. To be honest, I wasn't even sure there was a show in between the commercials. My self-absorbed wallowing was interrupted by a knock at the door. And on the other side was a police UFM. In an arm permanently bent at 90 degrees like a 1940s gangster was a gun. The tips of its floppy ears hung below a police cap emblazoned with the badge of the MECO. "You've been selected to join the MECO's new housing project," it said with a very serious face made from glowing pixels on a panel, but a voice that was deceptively cheerful. "You've been made redundant in manufacturing, but don't despair. The MECO has a plan for people like you. Woof woof!" A plan for people like me? I didn't like the sound of it, but I didn't have a choice. Not really. "Where am I being sent?" I asked with a shaky voice. "The MECO will select you a destination when you get to the bus depot," it said whimsically, spitting out an envelope from its chest, which I took cautiously. "These are your papers. Don't misplace them or you won't be able to board the bus. Please arrive at Theronville Bus Depot by noon today. You may bring 2 carry-on bags per household member. The rest of your property will be repatriated to pay for your relocation. Have a nice day. Woof woof!" It turned and continued on its way down the street to the next poor soul. I rushed back into my house to pack. I didn't argue. I wouldn't dare. I saw what happened to Dave the week before. Dave was my neighbor who'd been laid off like me. He refused to go when the UFM came to his door. He tried to slam the slab of wood in its cartoon face, but was shot where he stood. Then the machine pushed over him, grinding his body into the welcome mat. I could hear the screams of terror as it shot his family. Within hours, his house was demolished by UFMs carting off every memory of Dave and his family, one truckload at a time. I didn't have a family to lose, at least not anymore, but it got the point across. None of my other neighbors dared fight back either. I didn't know what was coming. There really was no way of preparing for what an AI could dream up. This was the end of humanity. It had to be. I packed light. There was no point in making it easy for them to pick through my best stuff, my lifetime of possessions that didn't amount to anything in this new world. Most importantly, I kept my papers close. These friendly robots sang a familiar tune in history, and that just made me dread more. I tried to convince myself that the jackbooted robots were anything but, that they really were as friendly as their faces tried to portray. At the bus station, a big box store that had been hastily converted once the MECO started deporting the town, I watched them gun down a woman who had left her envelope behind and tried to jump the line. I scanned the barcode on the outside of mine and entered the bus to Tower 17. We hit a pothole or something, and I was shaken back into reality by the woman next to me bouncing her face off my shoulder. I looked out the window to see that the fight hadn't been taken out of the people of Chicago, at least not willingly. Bullet holes riddled the partially deconstructed buildings. Blood still stained the streets. The outline of bodies smeared by tracks. The end of a city at the hands of a friendly terror. Construction UFMs continued their work as we passed, chiseling the bricks out of the shells of buildings, brick by brick, and stacking them onto their trays. Large converted car haulers sat on the street, UFMs loading themselves up before the trucks carried them off. The trucks had screens where their windshield should have been, a familiar cartoon face covering it, looking around, smiling, and winking at her bus as it went. Self-driving cars came in the shadow of the MECO without much fanfare or consumer choice. Manually driven cars disappeared off car lots. Buyback programs aggressively took cars off the market. There had been too much, too quickly for people to even notice it happening. We hit another pothole, or maybe a lost brick. Something. The destruction of Chicago was a marvel unto itself. The robots moved in a purposeful rhythm, tearing down one of the most complex cities humanity had ever created, boxing it up, and recycling it into a massive tower, like a set of children's building blocks. The city was disappearing quickly, and would be reduced to a concrete parking lot before too long. The MECO's recycling policies had always been extreme. By the end of my time at the factory, everything was being recycled, and anyone who didn't was usually punished by losing their job, then disappearing from town. Posters were everywhere, from the factory to the grocery store, issuing veiled threats wrapped in colorful pastels. I never talked to the woman sitting next to me. I never got her name, and she never asked mine. We'd picked her up along the way, like a lot of people. The bus just drove itself, picking up everyone who scanned their envelope. There were never any rules announced on the bus, no signs. We were all just frightened into an unspoken compliance that we didn't understand the depths of. It felt like we were the last humans alive. There weren't any people outside the bus, only UFMs. They'd become such a common sight that it was easy to mistake them for people. That had always been the point, to replace us without anyone noticing we were gone. The bus broke through the final remains of the old city and out onto the concrete mesa. From there, I could see the black holes in the tower weren't windows. They were gigantic vents, moving air in and out of the truly tremendous building. The bus entered a parking lot surrounded by a chest-high block wall. In the shadow of the building, staring down the gatekeeper, I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming dread. This was happening. Would I live out the rest of my natural life there, or find myself liquidated? I could see the gold crown of the illuminator glowing in the sunlight. I was truly in the land of the MECO. The old world was gone, along with my old life. The best I could do was stay calm and adapt. The first one I could do. Any obsolete person would struggle with the second. The door of the bus slid open on its own, and an automated voice called out, "Please disembark for Tower 17. East entrance, please." Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard and want to hear more, you can like the video or subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel and the stories I tell in a more direct way, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Links in the description. Thank you and good night.